The weather pattern across the United States has just exploded into complete chaos, and we're dealing with multiple disasters happening simultaneously that could reshape the entire atmospheric setup for weeks to come. Right now, we're tracking a massive atmospheric river that's absolutely hammering the West Coast with catastrophic flooding and feet of mountain snow, while at the same time, an unprecedented severe weather outbreak is developing across the South and Midwest with a significant tornado threat. But that's not even the worst part. This chaotic weather pattern is being driven by a collision between stratospheric warming effects and a powerful atmospheric wave called the Madden-Julian Oscillation, creating the most complex and dangerous multi-hazard weather situation we've seen in years. The latest forecast models are showing something truly extraordinary. Record-breaking rainfall totals across California that could trigger life-threatening flash floods, while simultaneously, we have tornado watch boxes lighting up from Texas to Georgia with the potential for violent tornadoes. And here's what makes this even more concerning. The polar vortex disruption that we've been dealing with is now interacting with Gulf moisture in a way that's creating perfect conditions for explosive thunderstorm development right as the West Coast gets pounded by this historic atmospheric river event. So in today's forecast, I'm going to break down exactly what's happening with this multi-disaster weather pattern, the catastrophic flooding threat on the West Coast, the dangerous tornado outbreak developing in the South, and why this chaotic setup could persist for days or even weeks. Now, let me start with what's happening on the West Coast because this atmospheric river is absolutely unprecedented in its intensity and scope. We're looking at a fire hose of moisture that's been aimed directly at Northern California, and it's not letting up. The latest observations are showing rainfall rates of up to 3 inches per hour in some areas, with storm totals that could exceed 15 inches in the hardest hit locations. This is creating an extremely dangerous flood situation, especially in areas that are already saturated from previous storms. The Russian River, the American River, and multiple other waterways are rapidly rising toward flood stage, and we could see major flooding that rivals some of the worst events in California's history. What makes this atmospheric river so dangerous is not just the rainfall amounts, but the warm rain that's falling on the mountains. Snow levels have risen dramatically, which means we're getting rain instead of snow at elevations that should normally be accumulating snowpack. This creates a double whammy effect where you get the direct rainfall plus rapid snowmelt, leading to extremely dangerous runoff conditions. Areas around Sacramento, Stockton, and the Central Valley are particularly vulnerable because all of this water is going to funnel down through the river systems. The National Weather Service has issued flash flood emergencies for multiple counties, which is their highest level of flood alerting, and they're warning that this could become a life-threatening situation very quickly. But while the West Coast is dealing with this catastrophic flooding, we have an equally dangerous situation developing across the South and Midwest with what could become a significant tornado outbreak. The Storm Prediction Center has issued a moderate risk for severe weather across parts of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, with a 15% tornado probability across the core of this threat area. What's particularly concerning is that we're seeing all the ingredients come together for not just tornadoes, but potentially violent tornadoes. We have extreme atmospheric instability with CAPE values exceeding 3,000 J-Keeles in some areas, which is off the charts for this time of year. We also have incredible wind shear with speed shear values over 40 knots and directional shear that's creating textbook supercell environments. The timing of this severe weather outbreak couldn't be worse. We're looking at peak heating during the afternoon hours when atmospheric instability will be at its maximum, combined with a powerful upper-level trough that's providing the lift needed to trigger explosive thunderstorm development. The latest high-resolution models are showing discrete supercells forming across East Texas and Louisiana during the early afternoon, with these storms having the potential to produce tornadoes, large hail up to baseball size, and destructive wind gusts exceeding 80 mph. As we move into the evening hours, we're expecting these storms to organize into a squall line. But even in linear mode, We could see embedded mesocyclones that produce brief but intense tornadoes. What makes this setup particularly dangerous is the fact that many of these storms are going to be moving through populated areas during peak activity hours. Cities like Shreveport, Monroe, Jackson, Montgomery, and Birmingham could all see significant severe weather impacts. The tornado threat is going to be highest from about 2 p.m. through 8 p.m. Central Time, which means people need to have their severe weather plans ready and multiple ways to receive warnings. We could see tornado emergencies issued for major metropolitan areas, and given the atmospheric setup, any tornadoes that do develop could be on the ground for extended periods with long track lengths. Now, here's where this gets really complex and concerning. These two major weather disasters are not happening in isolation. They're both being driven by the same large-scale atmospheric pattern that has gone completely haywire. The stratospheric warming event that disrupted the polar vortex has created a highly amplified jet stream pattern that's allowing these extreme weather systems to develop and persist. At the same time, a powerful Madden-Julian oscillation wave is moving through the atmosphere, providing additional energy and organization to these weather systems. This is creating a feedback loop where each system is feeding energy into the next, leading to this chaotic multi-hazard situation. The atmospheric river on the West Coast is being sustained by this amplified jet stream pattern, which is creating a direct pipeline of moisture from the tropical Pacific straight into California. Normally, these atmospheric rivers move through relatively quickly, but the current pattern is causing this one to stall out and repeatedly impact the same areas. This is why we're seeing such extreme rainfall totals and why the flooding threat is so severe. The jet stream is essentially stuck in a configuration that keeps funneling moisture into the same areas day after day. Meanwhile, the severe weather outbreak in the south is being fueled by the same pattern disruption. The highly amplified jet stream is allowing warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico to surge northward much further than normal, while at the same time, upper-level energy is diving down from the north. When you get this collision between warm, moist air and powerful upper-level dynamics, you create the perfect recipe for explosive thunderstorm development and tornado formation. But here's what's really concerning meteorologists. This pattern shows no signs of breaking down anytime soon. The computer models are indicating that this chaotic weather setup could persist for at least the next 7 to 10 days, with the potential for multiple rounds of both West Coast flooding and severe weather outbreaks across the South. We could see additional atmospheric rivers targeting California later this week, while the severe weather threat could shift eastward into the southeast and then potentially impact the mid-Atlantic and northeast. The flooding situation on the West Coast is particularly concerning because the ground is already saturated from previous storms. When you add 10 to 15 inches of additional rainfall on top of already saturated soils, you get extremely rapid runoff and flash flooding. Urban areas are especially vulnerable because storm drains and flood control systems simply cannot handle these extreme rainfall rates. We're already seeing reports of water rescues in the San Francisco Bay Area and Central Valley, and conditions are only going to get worse as this atmospheric river continues to impact the region. In the mountains, we're dealing with a different but equally dangerous situation. While lower elevations are getting rain, the higher elevations are seeing incredible snowfall amounts. Some areas of the Sierra Nevada could see 3 to 6 feet of new snow over the next few days, which would create extremely dangerous avalanche conditions and make travel virtually impossible. Donner Pass and other major mountain routes could be shut down for extended periods, which would have significant impacts on commerce and travel throughout the region. The severe weather situation in the south is equally concerning from a life safety standpoint. We're not just talking about isolated tornadoes. We're looking at the potential for a major tornado outbreak that could produce multiple violent tornadoes across a wide geographic area. The atmospheric parameters are so extreme that any supercells that develop are going to have the potential to produce significant tornadoes. We're talking about storms that could produce EF2 to EF4 tornadoes with devastating impacts on communities in their path, What makes this even more dangerous is the fact that we're dealing with a nighttime severe weather threat in some areas. As these storms move eastward through the evening and overnight hours, visibility becomes a major issue. People may not be able to see approaching tornadoes, and many people will be asleep when tornado warnings are issued. This significantly increases the risk of casualties, which is why it's so important for people in the threat area to have multiple ways to receive warnings and to take every tornado watch and warning seriously. The economic impacts of this multi-disaster weather pattern are going to be staggering. The flooding on the West Coast is already causing major disruptions to agriculture, transportation, and commerce. California's Central Valley, which produces a significant portion of the nation's fruits and vegetables, is being inundated with floodwater that could damage crops and contaminate agricultural land. Major highways and airports are being shut down, disrupting supply chains and causing significant economic losses. At the same time, the severe weather outbreak in the South is going to cause significant property damage and business disruptions. Tornadoes and severe thunderstorms can cause millions of dollars in damage in just a few minutes, and we're looking at the potential for multiple significant events across several states. Power outages from severe storms could affect hundreds of thousands of people, while tornado damage could destroy entire neighborhoods. Looking ahead, the forecast models are showing that this chaotic pattern could continue well into next week and possibly beyond. We could see additional atmospheric rivers impact the West Coast, while multiple rounds of severe weather continue to affect different parts of the country. This is the kind of weather pattern that meteorologists study and hope never actually happens. But here we are dealing with multiple high-impact weather events simultaneously. For the West Coast, the immediate priority is the flooding threat. If you're in an area under flash flood warnings, you need to stay away from flooded roadways and be prepared to move to higher ground if necessary. Do not attempt to drive through flooded roads. It only takes 2 feet of water to float a vehicle, and floodwaters move much faster than they appear. If you're in the mountains, be aware that avalanche conditions are extremely dangerous, and travel should be avoided if at all possible. For the South and Midwest, the tornado threat is the primary concern. Make sure you have a severe weather plan and multiple ways to receive warnings. Know where your safe spot is in your home or workplace. Ideally, a small interior room on the lowest floor away from windows. If you're in a mobile home, you need to have a plan to get to a more substantial structure when tornado warnings are issued. Do not wait until the last minute to take action. The bottom line is that we're dealing with a historic multi-hazard weather event that's going to have significant impacts across multiple regions of the country. This is not a normal weather pattern. This is an extreme situation that requires people to take immediate action to protect themselves and their families. The atmospheric setup that's driving these events is unprecedented in its complexity and intensity, and the impacts are going to be felt for days and potentially weeks to come. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We'll be providing continuous updates on this rapidly evolving weather situation, so turn on those notifications and we'll keep you informed with the latest developments. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.